I was in the middle of rewiring a lamp when my phone lit up on the workbench. It was a Saturday afternoon in late October, one of those crisp Michigan days where the light comes in sideways and everything looks like it's been dipped in gold. I'd been meaning to fix that lamp for 3 months. My late wife, Carol, had loved that lamp. She'd found it at an estate sale outside of Ann Arbor the year before she got sick, paid $12 for it, and acted like she'd found a Tiffany original. After she passed, I couldn't bring myself to throw it out, even when the wiring gave up. So there I was, reading glasses on, a cup of coffee going cold beside me, finally making good on something I'd been putting off. My daughter's name flashed on the screen. Ivy. I smiled, thinking she was probably calling to confirm Sunday dinner or ask if I'd remembered to pick up the cough syrup she'd asked about for the baby. We talked most days, even if it was just for a few minutes. That was one of the things I'd held on to after Carol died. Staying close to the kids, staying useful, staying present. I wiped my hands on a rag and answered, "Hey, sweetheart." There was a pause, not a normal pause, a loaded one. Dad. Her voice had that particular flatness to it that I recognized from when she was 17 and had crashed Carol's car and was trying to figure out how to tell me, "I need to talk to you about Thanksgiving." I set the lamp down. We'd been planning the Thanksgiving trip for 4 months. My daughter and her husband Grayson lived in Scottsdale, Arizona. They'd moved there 2 years ago, partly for Grayson's job in commercial real estate, partly because Ivy had always wanted to live somewhere warm. Their daughter, my granddaughter Hazel, had just turned 4 in September. The plan was for me to fly out from Michigan, spend 10 days with them, watch the Macy's parade on their big TV, make Carol's green bean casserole, and take Hazel to the desert botanical garden that she'd been asking about for months because she was obsessed with cacti, the way only a 4-year-old can be obsessed with something. I had already bought my plane ticket, non-refundable. "What about Thanksgiving?" I said. Another pause. Then, Grayson and I have been talking, and we think it might be better this year if it's just the 3 of us, just our little family unit. Hazel's at this age where the holidays can be really overwhelming for her, and we want to keep things calm and low-key. You may want to keep things calm and low-key. I didn't say anything for a moment. I was processing. "Dad, you understand, right? It's nothing personal. We just need this time as our own family." I looked across the garage at Carol's lamp sitting on the workbench. "You already booked Christmas," I said. "I'm coming for Christmas." Was that going to be just your little family unit too? Well, we haven't finalized Christmas yet. The way she said it told me everything. "Ivy," I said slowly, "I bought a plane ticket." "I know, Dad. We'll figure that out. It was non-refundable." "Dad, it's just one holiday." She said it the way people say things when they want a conversation to be over. I told her I had to go and that I'd call her back. I hung up and sat in the garage for a long time, listening to the neighbor's leaf blower 2 houses down. The coffee was completely cold by then. I didn't touch it. Here's what was going through my mind as I sat there. Not just the plane ticket, which was $412, not just the Thanksgiving dinner I'd been mentally rehearsing for weeks, shopping lists forming in my head, the specific brand of French fried onions Carol always used for the casserole. What went through my mind was the last 3 years. Carol died in March of 2021, pancreatic cancer. She was diagnosed in November, gone by March. Those 4 months were the worst of my life and also the most clarifying. You learn very quickly what matters. After she was gone, I had the house, my pension from 31 years as a civil engineer with the county, my savings, and my 2 kids. My son, Elliot, lived in Portland and had his own life, his own struggles. We were close, but not close. Ivy had always been the one who called, who remembered, who showed up. 2 years after Carol died, Ivy called me about the house in Scottsdale. She and Grayson had found a place they loved but were short on the down payment. Could I help? Of course I could. That was the word I used. Of course, $40,000 wired to their account on a Tuesday. I didn't ask for paperwork. I didn't ask about repayment. Grayson made good money, and I trusted my daughter. 6 months after that, Grayson's mother was throwing a 60th birthday party for her husband down in Tucson, and the catering had fallen through. Could I contribute to the replacement cost? They'd already put too much on their credit cards. I wrote a check for $3,000. I told myself it was just money. Carol would have done the same. Then came the kitchen renovation. Ivy had sent me pictures of their outdated kitchen, dark cabinets, old appliances, and mentioned that they'd gotten a quote, but it was more than they'd planned. They'd found a contractor willing to work with them if they could come up with half up front. Would I consider a loan? Another $18,000. This time there was a handshake agreement to pay me back, no paperwork, no schedule, just a handshake over FaceTime. I also paid for the nursery furniture when Hazel was born. The stroller, the crib, the little dresser with the star handles that Ivy had been eyeing on Pinterest. I bought the car seat. I paid for the newborn photographer because Ivy had mentioned offhandedly that she'd always wanted those professional photos, and Grayson had said it wasn't in the budget. I'm not saying any of this to paint myself as a martyr. I want to be honest here. I did all of it willingly. I did it because I had the money and they needed it, and that's what family does. Or at least, that's what I believed. I also did some of it because I was lonely and because being needed felt like a substitute for being loved, and it took me a long time to understand the difference between those two things. The evening after Ivy called about Thanksgiving, I was sitting in the kitchen going through old emails. I wasn't looking for anything in particular. I just do that sometimes when I can't sleep. Go through old threads, old receipts, trying to get a handle on where the time went. And that's when I found it. There was an email thread I'd been CC'd on by accident. Ivy had been forwarding a conversation to a friend named Dawn, and somehow my address had gotten pulled in from a previous thread. She'd probably never noticed. The message had been sitting in my inbox for 6 weeks, buried under newsletters and county pension updates. I almost didn't read it, but I did. The thread was between Ivy and Grayson, forwarded to Dawn with a short note from Ivy. Can you believe this is still going on? G and I were just talking about this last night. The conversation between Ivy and Grayson was from 3 months earlier. Grayson had written, "Your dad is getting more and more clingy. The Sunday calls are every week now. He called twice last Tuesday. Ivy, I know, it's a lot. He's been so much better since we got the kitchen done, but now he keeps hinting about the holidays. Grayson, we need to start creating some distance, especially financially. Once the refinance goes through and we're not depending on him for anything, we can start pulling back. Ivy, I feel bad. He's lonely. Grayson, he's also paying for things that are our responsibility. It's actually making it worse. He has no reason to let go if he's still our safety net. Ivy, you're right. The Thanksgiving thing. Let's just tell him it's about Hazel. He won't push back. He never pushes back. Grayson, perfect. And after the holidays, we can start spacing out the calls. Make it a gradual thing so he doesn't notice. Ivy, he's going to notice eventually. Grayson, by the time he does, we'll be on solid footing. The refinance buys us independence, then we just slowly restructure the relationship. Ivy, what does that mean? Grayson, it means we move from dad is our financial lifeline to dad is a guest in our lives, invited when convenient, not a constant presence. I read it 4 times, guest in our lives, invited when convenient. I closed the laptop and went and stood in the backyard for a while. It was cold. I hadn't put a coat on. There was a bird feeder Carol had hung from the oak tree, and I'd kept it filled every week since she died, even though I didn't know what kind of birds came to it. I just knew she'd want it filled. I stood there looking at it in the dark, and I thought about the $40,000 and the $3,000 and the nursery furniture and the car seat and the newborn photographer and the plane ticket I had bought to go see my granddaughter for Thanksgiving. Then I went back inside and made some decisions. The first thing I did was call my financial advisor the next morning. I'd been meaning to update my estate plan since Carol died, and I'd kept putting it off. I told him I wanted to move forward with the revisions. My previous will had left everything split evenly between Ivy and Elliot. I had him restructure it. A trust was set up for Hazel directly. Funds she could access for education or to purchase a first home, but controlled by an independent trustee, not by her parents. Elliot remained in the will. Ivy was removed. Then I called my bank. I had a joint account with Ivy that we'd set up after Carol died so she could help me manage things remotely if I ever needed it. I removed her from it. Then I called the airline. I explained the situation, that my travel plans had changed due to a family matter. They couldn't refund the ticket, but they gave me a credit. I used it the same afternoon to book a flight to Nashville, where my college roommate Ted had been living for the past 15 years. Ted had been asking me to visit since Carol's funeral. I'd always had a reason not to. Now I didn't. I didn't call Ivy that week. She texted twice. I responded both times briefly, warmly, giving her nothing to point to as an argument. I kept James's advice in my head. Be the reasonable one in every communication. I said I'd been busy. I said I was thinking about some things. I said we'd talk soon. Then Grayson called on a Friday night. I let it ring. He left a voicemail. His voice was careful and well-managed, the way I imagined he was in business negotiations. Hey, just wanted to check in. Ivy mentioned you've been a little quiet lately. We just want to make sure everything's all right. Give us a call when you get a chance. I did not give them a call. The following Monday, I got a call from my bank's loan department. A representative named, well, it doesn't matter. She told me that they'd received an inquiry from a borrower about a personal loan. It turned out Ivy and Grayson had applied for a home equity line of credit to fund the refinance Grayson had mentioned in the email. The house was jointly in their names and mine was not on it. I'd only contributed to the down payment, not co-signed the mortgage. But they'd listed me as a character reference and potential guarantor. I told the representative I had no intention of serving as a guarantor. She thanked me and said she'd note that in the file. 2 hours later, Ivy called. I answered this time. Dad. Her voice was different now. Not flat, tight. Did you tell the bank you wouldn't be a reference for our loan? I told them I wouldn't be a guarantor, I said. That's accurate. Dad, we needed that loan. I know. We're trying to refinance to get a better rate. It would save us almost $400 a month. That sounds like a good goal, I said. I hope you're able to figure it out. Silence. What is going on with you? Ivy, I said. I need to ask you something, and I'd like you to be honest with me. Is the reason you canceled my Thanksgiving visit actually about Hazel being overwhelmed by the holidays? A pause. A long one. It's complicated, she said finally. That's not a yes. Another pause. Grayson thinks we think that maybe we've been leaning on you too much, financially, and that it's created a kind of imbalance in the relationship, and we thought some space might help recalibrate things. She sounded like she was reading from something Grayson had prepared. I see, I said. And you thought the best way to recalibrate was to uninvite me from Thanksgiving and tell me it was about Hazel's sensory needs. Nothing. Ivy, I found the email. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I had ever heard. What email? The one between you and Grayson from 3 months ago. You accidentally CC'd me when you forwarded it to Dawn. I'm guessing you didn't notice. She didn't say anything for a very long time. When she finally spoke, her voice had changed again. Quieter, smaller. Dad, that was just venting. You know how it is when you and your husband are just, you talk through things. It doesn't mean invited when convenient, I said. That's the phrase that stuck with me. I'd like to understand what that means. Grayson didn't mean it like that. Then how did he mean it? She didn't answer. I've spent the last 3 years trying to stay close to you, I said. After your mother died, you were the one who kept me going. The calls, the visits, having Hazel. I thought that was real. I thought it was because you wanted me around. I didn't understand that the calls kept coming because I was still useful, that the visits kept happening because I kept paying for things. That is not fair. Which part isn't fair? Her breath caught. You're making it sound like I don't love you. I think you do love me, I said. I think it's more complicated than love. I think you and Grayson have spent the last few years making financial decisions that depended on me as a backstop, and now that you want independence, you're trying to engineer distance instead of just being honest with me. And I think I let it happen because I didn't want to examine it too closely, because examining it would have hurt like it hurts right now. She was crying. I could hear it. Dad, I'm sorry. I really am. The email was, it was stupid. We were stressed about the money and Grayson was frustrated and you should have talked to me, I said. Not about the money, about the relationship. If you wanted to restructure how involved I am in your daily life, you could have said that. I'm a grown man, Ivy. I can handle an honest conversation. I didn't know how. I know. I sat with that for a moment. I'm going to Nashville next month, I said, to see Ted, and I'm not going to be available the way I've been available. Not because I'm punishing you, but because I realized somewhere along the way that I stopped having my own life. I've been orbiting yours and Grayson's, and that's not healthy for either of us. Dad, we're not done talking, but we need some time first, okay? She said okay, very quietly. We hung up. I didn't sleep well that night. I'm not going to pretend the conversation felt good. Righteous anger is a clean thing in movies. In real life, it just sits in your chest and feels like grief, which I suppose it was. I was grieving the version of my daughter I thought I had. The version who called every day because she missed me. Nashville was good. Better than I expected. Ted had built a life there, a house out past the city, a workshop where he built furniture on weekends, a whole community of people who'd moved there from somewhere else and put down roots. We spent 5 days talking and cooking and driving around looking at the fall leaves, which were late that year. I didn't check my phone much. When I got back, there was a card in the mailbox from Hazel. Well, from Ivy in Hazel's name. A drawing of what I was told was me and Hazel standing next to a cactus. Hazel had signed her own name at the bottom in the large, effortful letters of a 4-year-old. I stood in the driveway in the cold holding that card for longer than I'd like to admit. I called Ivy that night. I got Hazel's card, I said. She wanted to make it. She kept asking about you. I didn't say anything for a moment. Is there any chance, Ivy said carefully, that you'd still want to come for Christmas? I know you have every reason to say no, but Hazel has been asking. And I have been thinking about everything you said. I talked to a therapist. Twice. Grayson came to the second session. How did that go? She let out a breath that was almost a laugh. He didn't like being told that he'd been managing you instead of respecting you. Those were the therapist's words, not mine. That's accurate, I said. She also said that I'd been using you as an emotional support system without giving you access to an honest relationship, which is, I've been sitting with that. Have you? Yeah. A pause. Dad, I am sorry. Not the kind of sorry where I'm just trying to get things back to normal. The kind where I actually see what I did. I thought about Carol, about how she used to say that the people who hurt you the most are usually the ones who are most afraid of losing you and handle it wrong. I used to think that was too generous. I'm still not sure she was right, but I know she would want me to leave the door open. I'll come for Christmas, I said, but I need some things to be different. Tell me. No money conversations. I'm not a resource. I'm your father. Okay, I want real time with Hazel. Not supervised, not managed, just the two of us, the way it used to be. Of course. And Grayson and I need to have a conversation, not about any of this necessarily, just a real one, where he actually talks to me like I'm a person and not a liability he's calculating. She was quiet for a second. I think he'd be willing to try. He's embarrassed, more than he's showing. That's a start. I flew into Phoenix on December 23rd. Grayson picked me up from the airport, which I hadn't expected. We drove the 40 minutes to Scottsdale, mostly in silence at first. Then, somewhere on the highway, with the desert spread out flat and strange on both sides of us, he said, "I owe you an apology. A real one, not a managed one." I looked at him. He was staring at the road. "I treated you like a problem to be solved," he said. "I'm good at that in business, and it was wrong to do it to my wife's father. To anyone." "It was," I said. "I was ashamed that we needed your money, and instead of being grateful, I resented you for it." "Which is?" He shook his head. "That's mine to deal with." I didn't tell him he was forgiven. I wasn't sure yet, but I told him I appreciated him saying it, and I meant it. Hazel met me at the door in a plastic tiara and a reindeer headband she'd apparently been wearing for 2 days straight. She wrapped both arms around my legs and said, "Grandpa, I missed you," with the full-body conviction that only small children can pull off. I picked her up, and she immediately started telling me about a lizard she'd seen in the backyard. We spent 3 days just being a family. Imperfect, still cautious with each other, but present. I made Carol's green bean casserole on Christmas Eve. I found the right brand of French fried onions at the third grocery store I tried. Hazel helped me pour them on top and ate half of them raw out of the can while I wasn't looking. Christmas morning, I gave Hazel a book about desert animals that I'd found at a shop in Nashville. She sat in my lap for 45 minutes while we went through every page. Grayson made coffee and sat across from us and watched, and something in his expression shifted. I don't know what it was exactly. Something unlocking, maybe. On my last night, Ivy and I sat on the back patio after Hazel was in bed. The desert at night in December has its own particular quiet, not like Michigan quiet, wider somehow. "I want to ask you something," Ivy said. "And you don't have to answer. Go ahead. When you found the email, what were you going to do? Like, what was your plan?" I thought about it honestly. I didn't have a plan. I was just trying to stop being a ghost. She looked at me. "What do you mean?" "I mean that I've been living like a ghost in my own life, moving through rooms, trying not to disturb anything, making myself useful so nobody would notice I was still grieving and lost and didn't know what to do with myself. I used your needs as an excuse not to figure out my own. So when I took myself off the account and booked Nashville, I wasn't punishing you. I was just trying to become solid again." She didn't say anything. Then she reached over and put her hand on mine, the way she used to when she was a kid. "Mom would have said something very wise about all of this," she said. "She would have said it in a way that made everyone feel it was their idea." Ivy laughed. "A real one." "Yeah," she said. "She really would have." The flight home was quiet. I had the window seat and watched the desert give way to mountains, then to the flat brown expanse of the middle of the country, then to the gray-white of Michigan in December. I had a book I didn't read. I was just watching the land go by. The things I'd learned cost me something. Not just the 40,000 or the 18,000 or any of the other figures I'd stopped counting, because counting them only made me feel stupid. What it cost me was the comfortable story I'd been telling myself, that I was needed because I was loved, that presence and usefulness were the same thing, that being a good father meant being available in every way possible at any cost. None of that is true. And learning it at 63, with your wife already gone and your kids grown and your life more than half over, is both late and exactly on time. My workshop is warm in the mornings. I've gotten back into the habit of working out there after my coffee, before the day gets away from me. I finished Carol's lamp. It works now, sits on the end table in the living room, throws a good light. I've started building a small bookcase just for the pleasure of it, not because anyone asked me to. IB calls 3 times a week, not every day. 3 times a week, which turns out to be exactly the right amount. Grayson texted me a question last month about refinishing a table. Genuinely ask my opinion, the way you ask someone who knows things. It was a small thing. It was not a small thing. Hazel asks when I'm coming back. I told her March. She said March is very, very many days away, which is true. I'm counting them too, in my own way. I keep the bird feeder filled. Starlings come mostly, and sparrows, and once in a while a cardinal so red it looks like someone painted it there as a joke. Carol would have known all their names. I'm learning.